All right, thank you everybody for being here today. Wow, this is such a great turnout for 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. Thanks for taking time out of your schedules for doing this. Thank you to Dan Schoen for putting this together. This is kind of an exciting day to talk about all the good work that we got done at the Capitol this last session. As always, it's an honor and a privilege to be hosted here at the Cottage Grove Hero Center and joined by our district leaders. This center trains some of the bravest individuals in our communities, and for that we express our gratitude. Before I was elected to office, I had many conversations with community members, and time again I heard how important it was to support public safety. In addition to hearing about it from the community, as a paramedic and a member of my fire department, I have seen those needs firsthand. That's why this session I worked hard to pass legislation that supports and benefits those in public safety, from grants for soft body armor to funding for armor radio systems and funding for continued training for our public safety officers. This session we dedicated $574.7 million, such a big number, I don't even know how to say it, to the Department of Public Safety, and an additional $300 million to local governments for public safety initiatives in the tax omnibus bill. These funds are coupled with a variety of avenues for our local cities to upgrade systems, advance training and recruitment of law enforcement officers, and continue to keep our communities safe. I want to highlight the funding that each city in District 41 will receive through the Public Safety Aid grants. These grants total, I want to say it's a little over $4 million, yeah, $4.2 million in public safety aid. The City of Grant will be getting $175,000. City of Lake Elmo will be getting $553,000. Cottage Grove will be getting $1.7 million. Afton will be getting $129,000. Lake Elmo will be getting $553,000. Lake St. Croix Beach will be getting $45,000. Lakeland will be getting $74,000. Lakeland Shores will be getting $14,000. St. Mary's Point will be getting $15,000, and the City of Hastings will be getting $975,000. In addition to that, our townships will receive aid through grants to the counties. So both Washington County and Dakota County will also be getting funding under this program as well. And to be clear, this money is over and above any LGA, county aid, or small city aid, and is only possible due to the hard work of Senator Heather Gustafson and I this last legislative session. I look forward to seeing all the good cities do with these funds and how they improve the lives of folks in the district. And I fully trust that our local leaders such as Mayor Bailey and Director Kerner, Commissioner Bigham, Sheriff Lico, and Sheriff Starry, Chief Redinas, Chief Wilski will put these funds to good use, since nobody knows the community better than our local leaders. With that, I would like to pass it on to Cottage Grove Director of Public Safety, Pete Kerner, to talk a little bit about these funds and talk about the use that we can expect to see in our communities.
This money could not have come at a better time for us. It's really kind of shook up our budget. You know, just looking into it, we have a vast list of things that we are going to utilize this money for. And obviously Cottage Grove being a public safety department, managing police, fire, EMS, and emergency management, making sure that it spreads out amongst all of our divisions. But kind of one of the key ones is obviously recruitment and retention. Cottage Grove is, we've been pretty successful with some of our recruitment. I think a lot of it has to do with community support, and of course this training center right here. A lot of our candidates come in and right away they're like, we know you're committed to training, we know you're, so we're kind of a step ahead right there. But we've really utilized our community service officers for our recruitment. The problem is they're in school, as soon as they're trained, they get hired somewhere. They have that experience, so we're happy for them to get a job wherever it might be, but we like to keep them here. So, but that's a big piece for us. Obviously, some of the staffing challenges we've had, both police and fire, as we've migrated our fire services to do our paramedic service as well. So staffing there is important, but all of the things in here are kind of been our strategic initiatives. Everyone in this room with officer wellness. So, you know, whether it's the neck up checks, peer support groups, but any kind of training with that, even updating some of our fitness centers at the fire station. We always talk about employee wellness, and that's just a huge piece. So I could ramble on and on, but yeah, this money is coming at just a great time for us. Case management, we're doing that. Mental health crisis. It's just like we have so many areas we want to work on. Community engagement has been a focus, so that 1.7 will probably go pretty quick, but it's going to be money well spent, and we appreciate this, and we look forward to further discussions on how maybe this money can continue to come into public safety, because it is helping all of us. So thank you.
That's good to hear. And in addition to, and I want to stress that this public safety aid is in addition to additional funding that I was able to secure for officer recruitment and retention, and other funding, and for mental health services. And I think it's good that we're having this conversation, and police departments and fire departments are having the conversation about employee wellness and mental health. The fitness equipment you mentioned, I think of my own fire department and kind of the discussions that we have about the fitness equipment in our station. It's adequate, but it's kind of not the first thing that we think of to spend money on. And I think if you have a good fitness department and time to train and time to keep active and in shape, it really does pay dividends in terms of wellness and preparedness for staff. So that's good to hear. Maybe turning it over to City of Hastings. What kinds of things do you have teed up and ready to go or use for your department?
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I'll admit the struggle is real. So when we talk about fitness equipment, a lot of times we're using secondhand equipment, and it breaks, and it's not in great condition, and it gets used quite a bit. So that is one thing that we'll be looking at. I can tell you that in the City of Hastings, we're not looking for recurring costs, and what that means is we probably won't be able to sustain that. So we're looking more at equipment, and equipment prices have really skyrocketed, and they're difficult to get, and that's hard for departments, both police and fire. We ran the numbers for the next 3 years in the city. Between police and fire, we're looking at $3.7 million in capital requests. We don't have that fund base to cover that. So this is going to be a great assistance as far as that goes. We talk about that mental health piece for police and fire. We have strong programs right now, but we can always enhance them. And that's what we're going to be looking at, programs similar to that. Right now, we try and utilize grant opportunities, but they're very competitive. And so we've had some success in the past, but this will give us the opportunity to look at how to harden some of our events, harden those targets, and make it more difficult for people to do bad things, for a better term. So really looking forward to that, and just if we can use some of that money for buying some of our equipment, we can update the building as well, because we are lacking in some of that tax base. The struggle is other communities that have a stronger tax base are getting new equipment, and because of the struggles with hiring right now, officers are looking at that shiny penny mentality, and they might be going to those departments. And so it's very competitive. So thank you for co-authoring this legislation, and we're very excited for it.
I want to talk a little bit, the EMS side of things. So we have representatives here in this room from police, fire, and EMS, fire EMS. And I know Cottage Grove is very strong in that capacity. Hastings does an excellent job with their EMS. But as a paramedic myself on Lower St. Croix Valley Fire and with EMS services throughout the state here, I understand, and I think the other EMS folks will understand when I say that sometimes EMS takes a back seat. We're not necessarily at the forefront of when people think of public safety. So it's been kind of my mission at the Senate and in the legislature to be the voice for EMS and to continue to advocate for those needs. And one of the things that I was proud to get done was We have now the ability for firefighters and EMS personnel to share in the body armor grant reimbursement program that law enforcement previously was only able to, it was only available to law enforcement. So we've secured additional funding for that and made it available so that folks on the fire department, folks on EMS can seek that reimbursement as well. And as we know, body armor is not cheap. I work for a service that services the North Metro, South Metro areas, and it's at our expense to wear that body armor as paramedics. The company will reimburse half of it, but that's still, we're still out $500 to do that. So this body armor grant will help those be able to wear soft body armor if they choose, secured for their departments. And I know when I mentioned that to my chief, he was, the wheels started turning already. Because it's something that we don't think about necessarily, but it's certainly a useful fund for that. So maybe turning to the fire side, Cottage Grove Fire, can you talk a little bit about this funding and how it can be used in your department?
Well, thank you, Senator. I think what we're going to be looking at is, like the Director Turner mentioned, is retention and recruitment. It's being, on the fire side, if you're a combination department like we are, it's getting tougher and tougher for part-time staff to want to work part-time hours. A lot of people just don't have the time to give that part-time role to their community. They want to, but they just, nowadays with everything being so fast-paced, they just can't seem to get the time to do it with the extra training that's involved. As you know, being on a fire department, it is taxing, especially on younger families. And in the past, that's where a lot of our recruitment came from, was younger people. But as they start to grow up and their families they start to have less and less time. So we're looking at focusing on how we can recruit them to want to come and keep the current ones we have, so we have a good, strong base as a combination department. That we in Cottage Grove feel that that's how the direction we want to go, and we want to stay that direction. Although there's agencies around us that are going strictly full-time, we don't see that yet. We still see that we want to be a combination department, so we have some full-time staff, some part-time staff, and a lot of it is we want to have people from the community join the department, because if you have that strong community base, there's that sense of belonging and feeling, and you want to give back. So we're doing what we can to market that.
And I think the challenges that Cottage Grove faces are not unique to Cottage Grove, obviously. I would say you're sort of a mid-sized to larger department in terms of staffing and the area that you cover. But it's something that we're seeing in fire departments throughout the state, certainly. Switching from a volunteer paid-on-call model to a more part-time, full-time model to a more full-time model. And certainly on my department, I think the recruitment issue is very real. It's very difficult to get younger folks on the department. And if you look at the makeup of just my department, it is kind of top-heavy, bunch of us older folks on it. And so it is an issue. How do you recruit people? How do you get them to take their time out of their day to be able to respond to calls and want to do it for, not a whole lot of pay, but really for the love of the job and the love of the community. And I would say the Hastings department maybe is a middle ground between Cottage Grove and a Lower St. Croix. Certainly other challenges for Hastings Fire, and I guess I'd be interested to hear from Hastings what this money will do for fire.
Well, thank you again for your hard work on this important legislation. For our department, I think so far everybody's been talking about the many struggles that law, fire, and EMS all have. We're still pretty early in our budget, but we do have a significantly aging fleet of equipment. Just in the last 2 years, prices of vehicles have gone up significantly. Fire trucks that cost $700,000 2 years ago are now over $900,000. With an aging fleet and trying to do things like right-sizing our fleet and having to make some adjustments around that, things that we'll be looking at with this legislation in the budget. A lot of you have talked about recruitment and retention and wellness, I think that's been well covered. I think really that wellness piece, even beyond the fitness, is of course mental health, and taking care of people so that they feel good about the job that they're doing, and when they have struggles, they get the help that they need so that they can have long careers. So our retention is equally as important as recruitment. So once we do get them, we got to take really good care of these folks. So those will be things that we're looking at with this, and continuing to move forward with trying to find the most impactful way to utilize these funds. So thank you again.
So I don't want to leave the counties out of the discussion here. There's also, I mean, in addition to each city, every county gets a chunk of the public safety aid, as do tribal communities. So maybe I can turn this over to Dakota County, and you can share a little bit about plans for how this will benefit Dakota County.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for all your work on this at the Capitol. I know it was a long session down there, but this is very beneficial for all of us. And I'm not going to reiterate everything that's already been talked about as far as retention, recruitment, and wellness. Those are all very important things. And we're just beginning our budget discussions here in the county with the county board and the commissioners. And this will greatly help us as far as strategizing, how we're going to impact public safety in Dakota County. We have some ideas. I have some ideas that we're looking at. I mean, there's equipment and needs like that also always fall in the needs, but also how can we get out in the community more and create awareness? We have the fentanyl, crisis going on right now, and there's opioid money and other funds that might be coming in, but we're being asked as a sheriff's office a lot of times to be out front on these things with our drug task force. So we're asked for money, fiscal assistance, right? So could we help with some of this money in that way, as far as creating awareness, not only in our communities, but also in our schools? Other things are being transparent with the community to establish that trust. We at the Sheriff's Office don't have a crime mapping software where you can see where calls are being taken in our service area and what those type of calls are. I think it's important that the community understands the jobs that we do and what we're responding to and the types of calls. We have social media, but that's also just one view of it. But I think the real-time reporting, creating that transparency and communication and community outreach will be something we seriously look at in Dakota County as well to all of our constituents. So again, really appreciate this funding to help offset a lot of our costs, because we do a lot with not much. All due respect to the county, we have great training. We really do at the Sheriff's Office, and equipment. With that said, technology changes as well. We do have, as Sheriff Steyer will say, we have the responsibility to cover our waterways and rescue and recovery. We're looking at upgrading some of our recovery equipment for our dive team, maybe a ROV to search, or increase our dive, improve our dive trailer and equipment and things like that. So as technology changes too, that's expensive. But we could utilize that and leverage some of that to improve our effectiveness, I guess, in those recovery efforts.
I think it's the community outreach piece is so important, because the demands on our sheriff's department are tremendous. I mean, the amount of responsibilities and areas that fall under the jurisdiction of a sheriff's department, like you said, from the waterways to the law enforcement piece to service of process to whatever it might be. There certainly is a wide range of services that are provided by a sheriff's department that I think maybe we're not as aware of as we should be. So the community outreach piece, I think, is such an important part. How about Washington County? Sheriff Starry.
Thank you, Senator, for having us. And what I'll say is each department up here in county, just phenomenal in the sharing of responsibilities in the city or outside into the counties are just amazing. And this money is truly needed. And what I would ask for is let's get some more as we go forward. Not a one-time thing. These costs continue to come through. And so I know there's other things that are on the table. The SANE exam, the sexual assault nursing exams. Thank you for that. It started a request a little while ago, but we finally got it over the mark with your assistance. So I say thank you for that. It will assist the victims of sexual assaults. And so us at the counties, we say thank you, and it does impact the cities as well. Washington County, we have 281 fabulous employees. They do amazing work all the time. They don't do it alone. We don't do it in silos, and that's where our partners up here really, all of this money it doesn't just stay here. It advances our equipment, advances our technology, our services to our communities and our constituents, but it also goes outside. It goes into Wisconsin, it goes into Ramsey County, because we share equipment, we share resources. And crime knows no border, and sometimes we just have to go. 35W bridge collapse, when that occurred, we were there. And so when you talk about waterways, we have the St. Croix, we have the Mississippi, we have all of our lakes, but we also go and assist others, whether it's down in Winona or in Hennepin County or up north. Our team travels quite a bit. What I will say for the sheriff's offices, we have 281. We have 128 sworn licensed deputies in the courts out on the street. We have 86 correctional officers in the jail. We have 34 dispatch. We have our support services, our whole team of them. And so this money will affect each and every one of them going forward. And that's our goal, is to make sure that it's not a one-time funding and we're done. We're trying to spread it out over several years. We get $3.3 million out of this, which is a large number, but the equipment costs and everything else that we need, I submitted a budget to our county administrator for $4.3 million, and that just covers the sheriff's office. That doesn't include some of the others that are asking for assistance, so our crisis response unit. What I will say with that as well is thank you for that, because there are some grants that were passed this year for our crisis response team and social workers as well. So that assists them going forward too. So there's a lot of uses. We're in the beginning stages of talks with our county board, our county administrator, and but they're so supportive, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish and what's finalized out of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. You mentioned the sexual assault kits, and I want to take just a minute to talk about that legislation. That legislation puts the cost of testing those kits on the state versus county to county, and relieves a burden from the county, and kind of makes it a uniform process, and works a lot of the bugs out of the system and makes it work better. And I want to thank Commissioner Carla Bingham for really pushing that and making sure that that didn't get lost in the shuffle, and bringing that to the forefront of my attention and making sure that we move that forward. Without Commissioner Bingham's hard work and perseverance to make sure that that did not get forgotten, it very well could have in the flurry of activity that we saw at the Capitol. So
I appreciate it. Can I brag about you for a second, real quick? So I think there's a lot at this table that I think the fentanyl thing is huge. That was obstructed for a few years. The unified billing of sexual assault kits obstructed for years. There were a lot of really good policies that just gridlock Senator Seeberger didn't get done. Time and time again, Commissioner Atkins and I would, he'd be up there. How many years did we have similar table exercises like this, where most of you were called deputies at the time, not chief and sheriff? Some of you have been around for a while, where you're chiefs and sheriffs still, that we were talking about this stuff, right? Now it's done. Now it's done, and it's going to help people. And I remember being up there and asking MPPOA and the Sheriff's Association, police chief, saying, what happens if we don't pass this stuff? And they said, our communities don't get any more safe. Year after year after year, it didn't get done. And this year it got done. So I thank you for fighting through all that gridlock. A couple things that haven't been mentioned that I know are super important to all of us. The embedded social workers for mental health and crisis response, I know the sheriff briefly mentioned that. That's huge. And I know Dakota County led that charge. They now have it in every community. It's a little expensive, but they have money. So we're going to really try and do that. And they are pioneers on this, and they do a tremendous job. They are such an efficient, debt-free. You want me to just continue to brag about you instead of me? Yeah, 20 years I've had the honor of representing Washington and Dakota, so I kind of adopt them as like my sister county. But it's such a wonderful program that I think really meets the needs of people in crisis, and it's the right way to do it. I think the fentanyl crisis, Senator Seeberger, Congresswoman Craig had a wonderful town hall here this week that the mayors were both at and law enforcement were at, and I think that is a collaborative effort that we're all attacking, because that's what we need to do. It's really a tragic situation that we're all working through together, and from the feds, the state, to the communities, nonprofits, schools, all of that. Having Narcan in schools. I mean, these are things that you worked on that really are going to have a meaningful impact. I think body armors, radios, armor funding, I mean, that was you. You just did a lot of really good work that is going to have a tremendous impact on our departments and in our communities. I wholeheartedly agree with the sheriff that let's see if we can't have this ongoing, because you know we do have a retention and recruitment issue. Each and one of these departments are well respected because they have wonderful leadership. Our communities believe in them and they respect them. You know, they expect somebody that the police are going to arrest somebody higher than a kite going 95 miles an hour down a highway. They're going to get arrested and go to jail. That's what's expected, no questions. Because they know that that's what law enforcement is to do in this community. And so I think when policymakers, the mayors, senators, commissioners, lift law enforcement up and bring them the tools and the support that you did, Senator Seeberger, and others, to bring them the resources they need to do the job and the tools they need. That's what this is about, to make our communities more safe. So I just wanted to thank you for your work and your efforts, and to continue to do that. And thank everybody for being here today. And now I'm going to see if my friend Commissioner Atkins has anything more to say, if he can top that. But he's a lawyer and has really good hair, so we'll see.
My claim to fame apparently is good hair. Senator, and to Dan Schoen, thank you for the invitation to join you this morning. I chair our legislative committee for the Dakota County Board, and kind of got pushed into that role because I was in the legislature for 14 years. So I pay a little closer attention than most. You know, I think we can all definitely agree the era of gridlock is over. But I came across the river, forded the river, came over here primarily just to say thank you. Senator Seeberger, you were an amazing leader on public safety issues. And you know, public safety issues, crime just doesn't magically stop at borders. So to be in a table like this with folks from both sides of the river, who I know you all work so well together, we're only as strong as our neighbors. And when I'm surrounded in a group like this, it's great to know that we've got great neighbors working together to do good things and prevent harm from happening. The other piece that I would add to it is that if you're going to have a great community, you all know this. I mean, if you're going to have good economic development, you're going to have quality neighborhoods, you're going to have quality housing, it starts with safety. And so this investment, what you've done with this funding, goes so far towards accomplishing that. And so I mostly just came over here to say thank you. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. And thanks, Carla, for those kind words. You know, we found ourselves in a very unique situation this last legislative session with the trifecta and with the budget surplus. We did have that opportunity to carve out this money and make sure it went to our communities. And I would love to see it ongoing, and I think that's something that Senator Gustafson and I and a few other senators can really work hard on, put our shoulders to the wheel and see if we can't make it happen, because I think when departments are underfunded or unfunded for so long, one infusion of money is not gonna carry you across the finish line too far. We need to make sure that the funding is ongoing and the needs are met. Technology is expensive, vehicles are expensive, equipment is expensive, but it's necessary to ensure that not only people can do their job, but you can attract the right people. So it's so important. I do want to say that even with everything we had going for us this session, with the trifecta, with a focus on public safety, with a governor who, seemed to be behind public safety and funding, it wasn't a done deal, and it was something that Senator Gustafson and I had to fight really, really hard for. And it was kind of a moving target, and it was something that we burned a little bit of political capital to make sure that this happened, but it was that important to us to make sure that it got done. So everybody in this room, you have my commitment, my personal commitment. For as long as I am in the legislature, I will continue to fight for the funding that public safety needs, and that includes law enforcement, fire, and EMS. I want to invite our mayors to say a few words. Mayor Bailey, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's almost like ditto all the way around the room here, but thank you, Senator, for the support up at the Capitol this year, specifically on public safety. And you kind of heard it through the room here, and I'm one of these, I almost want to call myself a little nerdy, that when something happens, we have a major event in our community, as my police chief here knows, and also fire chief down there, I will at a point go out and check. I want to go see, find out, is the equipment working? Do we have the right manpower in that? The one thing I wanted to say is what I do also notice, and we actually had this happen over Memorial Weekend, we had 2 major fires that happened in our community at the same time. And all the different fire departments around here all came to support Cottage Grove, as we also go and support Hastings and other communities around there. And that is why it's so important this funding doesn't just stick, as you mentioned, with one community. It's important for all communities, because we do share resources, we share people, we share equipment. And then we unfortunately had another situation in our community towards the end of the school year where there was an incident near our high school. And as we all know, with all this craziness in the world these days with, armed gunmen and things like that, the amount of public safety personnel that showed up in our community from everywhere, every county, our county, everybody was here. And that again goes to show the leadership and the support of one another, and it makes me feel very prideful and honored in our community that we're surrounded by these individuals here in this room, and my partner down here in Hastings as an example, because we all work together. And so this funding, I know that we've had some conversation internally too about what can we use this money for that's going to benefit our officers, our fire department, and our community as a whole. And I know there was some conversations earlier about certain equipment. Our administrators sitting in the audience here, and some of that money we already talked about. There was some equipment that, because of pricing, has went up so much, so we were going to probably have to push out some of the I'll say the total purchase of all of it. We're going to have to purchase things in stages. This money will allow us to get it all now, and it's important that we get it now. And so I just wanted to thank you for that, because without this funding, we would be stretching some of these important technology needs over years, frankly. So I want to say thank you for that.
That's good to hear. And I think the problem with buying things incrementally is, I think in the end, you end up spending more.
Yes.
It becomes more expensive if you have to piecemeal it over time. So it really is kind of it can be a cost-saving measure to buy it when you need it, rather than try to replace it over time. Mayor Mary Fassbender,
Yes.
passing it to you.
Thank you. It's really hard to go last, of course, because what else do I say other than thank you, and we do appreciate it. But I will say, sitting in this room with both sides of the bridge. We consider Hastings, you know, a really supportive community, but we extend that to Cottage Grove. We work really well together, and our fire and EMS and police do support each other, and we're really thankful for that. On the other note, you know, when people look at a community to move to, what's their number one issue they look for? Is public safety. Again, between Hastings and Cottage Grove and our surrounding areas, I think they do a really good job. We do a really good job in that. These dollars couldn't come at a better time. We also are working on our budget, and there's always wants, right? These aren't wants that we need. They're needs that are important to sustain a really safe community. So it's all appreciated. As Chief Wilski said and Chief Townsend, I mean, we have lots of things on our list, but I think it's just going to help at the end of the day, maybe check something off in another area, but assist in a better area. So, thank you.
Fantastic. I appreciate hearing from the leaders in the communities here in 41 about this public safety funding and the things that we get done, but I'd like to open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions for me about additional things we got done at the Capitol for public safety, or for anything really, or any other questions.
So you guys, I think this had to be a record-setting year with respect to investments in public safety, public infrastructure, public works. Do you anticipate for 2024 another public works bill that could be both public? I know with the Hero Center, for example, the Smart Center in Dakota County, both were bonding projects, and I don't know if there's still, after passing a historic bonding bill this year, if there's an appetite or expectation that there will be one, and I'm going to walk this over to you so we don't have to, but what do you anticipate for 2024, Senator?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do expect another bonding bill in the next session to include some of the projects that weren't included this time around. We had a comprehensive list of things that needed to get done. And again, a lot of things that people wanted to get done, but a lot of things that really needed to get done and still need to get done. And with the gridlock that we have seen in years past, a lot of things didn't get done. So we have a lot of pent-up need that needs to get addressed. And so I do expect another really good comprehensive bonding bill coming up this next session, where we can try to capture some of these additional projects. Yeah, I know this year the Hero Center was included in, my gosh, we went back and forth between projects getting funded through a bond, through a cash deal, through a combination, through a, so things were in and out, and half funded and fully funded, and so kind of when the dust settles and we see what's left to get done, we can start tackling those next session.
Thank you.
I can ask. I don't know if it's more of a question or just more of a comment, but I just want to say, we appreciate your willingness to meet with us. City Administrator Levitt and I came up to your office and visited, and I know you had a stack of all these different bills you're going through, and we asked a lot of questions, and I mean, we talked about some of even the minor things like the catalytic converter legislation that you guys had passed. One of the other key things was we talked a lot about, PTSD, and with our officers and staff that have gone out, what a cost that we've taken on, and I know there was some changes with that, so maybe if you could talk a little bit about that's something I'd like to hear more about.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I'm always happy to meet with anybody from the community, my community leaders, and anybody to come up and
you have a beautiful view out your window of the Capitol.
I really, if for no other reason, just come and look at my view, because it's pretty amazing. But it's great to get that feedback and to get an understanding of what the needs are in the community and how I can help at the Capitol. And when it comes to PTSD, that number one, I'm glad that we're continuing to talk about it and we're continuing to address it. It is a debilitating condition, and folks who are dealing with PTSD and their families are really, I think they can really struggle when it comes to getting not only like work comp benefits if it's due to work, or other benefits, and the ability to just keep going as a family when you're trying to deal with that condition. So I'm glad we got legislation passed. I did get a bill passed. Sadly, sometimes PTSD ends in suicide, and I got a bill passed that would now include that as a loss of duty death. If a member dies, if somebody dies by suicide connected to their service in a police department or public safety related, and that I had a family who was advocating for that, and the story really it's not uncommon, but it's hard to hear. So I'm glad we got that done. We do need additional funding to continue to treat folks who are experiencing PTSD, and the goal is to get them to a point where the condition can be managed, they can get back to work, right? We can't keep losing folks when we already have a workforce shortage to PTSD that is inadequately addressed, inadequately treated, and these folks are not able to effectively manage their condition. So I want to continue to work on that. We do have some good legislators up there that really acknowledge and work hard for mental health and other issues of mental well-being, and things that sometimes can be tricky to address, hard to treat, but certainly worthwhile to spend the time.
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to, I don't want to speak for Sheriff Starry, but the mental health side, not just on our deputies and officers, employees side, but also on, the inmates. And continuously, we're seeing that increase with our population, and it places a lot of stress on the counties and the jails, especially. And I know you championed our bonding request for a mental health facility, integrative health unit, which is going to be adjacent to our jail. That's one solution, but the disturbing part is when we had a case a few weeks ago where we actually had not even an inmate, not even charged with a crime, just placed in our jail as a judge ordered because there's not a bed available in the state. So we're responsible to take over, the care of this person that didn't even commit a crime. So we need to figure out, and I don't know if that, I assume there'll be continuous discussions on a state level, the placement of these individuals who are in mental health crisis that need care. It should not fall to the county responsibility and liability, because we're not trained for that. We don't have the equipment for that. We don't have the medical staff for that to handle those ongoing needs. And it's a big challenge. It's a huge stressor. You talk about retention. It burns out the correctional deputies quicker just with one or two people that are in our custody that demand that attention. It can really burn out teams really quick, and it's a lot of I guess it's a lot of work and a lot of challenges for us internally that we have not faced before. So I know those discussions will continue, but we need to find some real solutions, and policy can impact those solutions.
On top of that, I'll just add, you graciously spent some time in our emergency communications center in Washington County, and I just want to also put a pitch in that emergency communications specialists, formerly known as dispatchers, really we're having a hard time across the state, not only with these spam fake calls by droids, so use iPhones, but retaining and recruiting communication specialists are very difficult. They also are experiencing burnout and trauma as well. And so I know that we've had discussions about maybe some possible legislation on how to help with that too, but I hope that will start up in earnest next session to have some policy and discussion around that profession as well.
That's a good point, Commissioner. The Commissioner and I did tour the Washington County Communications Center, and I made the comment when I was there that is not a job that I could do. I'm a paramedic. I respond to different kinds of emergencies, but those folks that take the calls and deal with the people who are experiencing the crisis firsthand, it's not something that I don't think I could do. And I know that the emergency communications personnel are truly the behind-the-scenes folks and do often get overlooked. So I'm excited to have those conversations and work on policy that will benefit them, along with the rest of our emergency responders. In terms of mental health, our folks in crisis absolutely should not be incarcerated, for lack of a better place to put them. We do have a shortage of beds in the state and around the country. It's been at crisis levels for a long time, and I think we really need to focus our energies at a state level and at a policy level to really coming up with some solutions and starting piece by piece to make small changes that I think will start to affect the system. But we do need to come up with a better way so that the jails aren't the place to put people because there is no bed. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the person in crisis. It's not acceptable for the jail personnel, for you, for anybody. It's the wrong place. It's the wrong treatment. So we need to do something right now to ensure that those people have a bed and they get adequate treatment. And certainly part of that is having mobile crisis units on the ground that can begin to address the problem where it is. I know as a paramedic, oftentimes, and I see this, we all see this, someone's in crisis, we pick them up, we transport them, they get to the hospital, and then they're back out, and then tomorrow we pick them up again and we transport them, and they're not getting the help that they need. And so we really need to look at the system as a whole, look at where we can dramatically retool the system so that we have the resources, so that these folks can get the treatment or the space that they need, so that they can really experience some therapeutic treatment versus just passing it off to the next agency.
Thank you very much for having this event today, first of all, and the opportunity to ask these questions. I will simply reiterate a great deal of appreciation for what you and Senator Gustafson did for us. It is very helpful to get this one-time infusion of cash, but as you've heard, there's so many needs. To try to continue to provide additional funding would be magnificent, especially for our city budget here in Cottage Grove and city budgets around the state. So, in my time as a council member, I've seen law enforcement in particular evolve into a more specialized attack. It used to be that you didn't have the case management units and you didn't have all of the various specialty units that you have now. And I very much appreciate the fact that law enforcement has evolved in that regard, because it makes our communities safer, and it also, I think, makes law enforcement more effective. But as hard as our law enforcement teams work on the streets as specialists to try to address all the issues that have been mentioned here today, mental health, we've talked about narcotics and fentanyl and things of that nature, and the event with Representative Craig the other night was just terrific. We also have to think about what happens after that. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts or can inform us about any sort of changes in the way that our court system is handling some of the issues that we're dealing with now. I know that the staffing challenges in law enforcement and in the fire departments and in EMS, those extend to the courts, and they're not always fully staffed. And I also think COVID changed the way that the courts operate to a large degree, and so what we're seeing is an extended period of time before somebody may get arrested until they're held accountable. And then if they do get held accountable, sometimes due to the amount of cases that a court is dealing with, they don't get held fully accountable, and then they're back on the street. Are there some things that you can tell us about with regard to how we improve the way that our court system works more efficiently and hopefully keeps those offenders from getting back out on the street so quickly so that they can reoffend?
That's an excellent question. And you kind of hit it on the head. As with law enforcement, fire, EMS, there is a staffing shortage at the court level. Not only that, but court staff have not had a raise in a very long time. So their pay is below what it should be. So we were able to fix that this last legislative session. We were able to increase the pay for court staff, law clerks, and judges for the first time in, I don't even remember how long, very long time, to at least get them up to a level where it's competitive. Because you're not going to work in a place where you can earn more money doing less work somewhere else. But we also have to look at the caseload of our judges. And what I do know is that our judges are overloaded. And I had this conversation with my colleagues in the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee that a lot of our judges, we need to consider or talk about creating additional judgeships to take some of the loads off of the judges that we have. If you have so many cases that you can't meaningfully address them, things like inadequate sentencing or folks falling through the cracks is going to happen. And so what I think we need to do, and the conversation I would like to have, is to look at the various districts and counties, judicial districts and counties, and see where there's a need for an additional judgeship, and see what we can do to create that so that our judges aren't so overburdened, and so that there can be justice can be meaningfully served to those who are arrested and convicted of a crime. Because what we don't want to see is these folks being turned back out onto the street to offend again for whatever reason. But the last thing I want to see happen is a judge be so overloaded that a case not be properly addressed. So that is a conversation that I want to continue to have. Great question.
Thank you, Senator. Just one real quick question on a policy. I know Washington County and I know Dakota County and Hastings and pretty much the entire metro has been really struggling with people just choosing not to stop and initiate police pursuits. So the city of Cottage Grove went from approximately in 2019 an average of 10 to 11 per year, and we're now pushing 40 per year. So the increase is not just a little bit, it's a dramatic increase, and these become very dangerous for not only the law enforcement, the other individuals that are not only in the car, but the general public. We just saw an incident where it wasn't a police pursuit, but they decided that an officer was going to probably try to make a traffic stop, and they flee at very high speeds, putting everyone at great danger. And we've talked to the county attorney and kind of said, what is it that we can do? And we've done, I think, in law enforcement, a great job. We stopped. The State Patrol helicopter has been out much more, and they're able to follow from a distance. But these people don't slow down. Even after we stop the initial traffic stop, they just don't stop. But there's really no teeth in the policy, so that the general sentencing guidelines from what we're hearing from the county attorney is it's the lowest level felony in the state of Minnesota. And as a patrol commander of an organization, we really think that the policy needs to change. And that's something that I think you could help us with, is to change that policy. Maybe these first-time offenses, if you do X, Y, and Z, if you go on the opposite lane of traffic, if you're traveling at 100 miles an hour, that ratchets that up where there's a minimum sentence for some of these things that they just don't get out immediately after, because the judges are tied with the sentencing guidelines that they're following. So that's really something that, for me, if you could assist us, and I think the other law enforcement agencies will agree, that policy shift needs to happen. That is a serious crime, and it shouldn't be on the sentencing guidelines so low. And I don't know if anyone else in the law enforcement would like to talk about it, but Sheriff Starr maybe would.
It's a great topic, Craig, and what I would say along with that is the juvenile crime. I just got done with a town hall meeting with Commissioner Schnell and Commissioner Jacobson, but what are we doing with the juveniles? We just had another pursuit. Ramsey County had a pursuit yesterday. All 7 of the juveniles were from 14 to 16, ended up in Hudson, where they fled there. So with that being said, we need some teeth, or we need a better youth intervention program with our youth, because we continue to see many of these same youth that are carjacking, that are stealing vehicles, that are fleeing. And it's not going to end well, and we know that. At the start of it, when we see this, we need some teeth and need some new policy in regards to the youth, but also, like Greg said, just fleeing in general. We see it every night. We haven't had so many pursuits in years and years, and it's since 2020, they've went through the roof. And certainly those are the discussions and policy discussions that we can have and should have as we go forward. So.
That's a great topic, and I'm glad you brought that up. And what day is today? Wednesday? I was just up in the State Patrol helicopter a couple days ago. I don't even know what day it was. Monday? But it was fascinating to see the technology that they have, and that they do have a helicopter in the air every night, just for the ability to assist with and respond to pursuits, so that law enforcement on the ground can back off. Hopefully they slow down, often they do not, but the idea is to hopefully take the heat down a little bit so that we don't see catastrophic tragedies when somebody is driving 100 miles an hour, disregarding traffic signals, and hurting innocent folks that are just going about their lives. So I was encouraged to learn more about the role of the State Patrol, the helicopters, and we were able to, at the state level, fund the State Patrol some more, so they are getting additional aircraft as well to assist with that. From a policy level, hearing that we need to change that to try to help address it within the judiciary, I'm willing, let's continue that conversation. I want to learn more. I want to learn more how we can help at the state level with that. If it means adjusting the offense, adjusting sentencing guidelines, sentencing levels, let's talk about that, because if we need to make a change to address what we're seeing an increase in, then that's something I want to learn more about. In terms of the juvenile issue,
Time's up. No,
oh,
G.
Is that the signal? In terms of the juvenile issue, I know we did a tremendous amount of work on juvenile justice issues this past session, but more can certainly be done. I think we need to do more to address these kids who you keep seeing time and time again, and how do we provide the support they need, the accountability that they need, so that they're not continually wrapped up in the system, let off to reoffend again, because it's not going to end well. You and I both know that. So these are conversations I'm happy to continue to have, and let's work on some bills and some policy next session that can start getting at those issues.
Deputy Chief Showalter was the only one who didn't say anything, so if you got one last thing, I think we're at the end of our limit here.
Any closing thoughts?
Can't let you go scot-free on coming up.
I appreciate that. The only thing I can think of that hasn't been covered so far would be down the road additional funding for the recurring training costs that every agency is seeing. Law enforcement today is expected to be, a tactician, a first responder, a doctor, a psychologist, a sociologist, and we're expected to have all of these things, and the legislature is increasing the amount of training that we need to attend annually for a post license. So, we're having every officer attend the bias training, the autism, the deconfliction training, our OSHA requirements, our pursuit training, our firearms and tactics training, and maintaining funding for an agency that's 31 officers is difficult. And I'd imagine even the larger agencies are still having difficult times maintaining the ability to fund that training. So in the future, I guess I would be interested in seeing more funding available to the departments to incorporate more training into what they're doing, or at least be able to maintain what they're doing for their post-licensing.
And that's a great point. And I've had these discussions at the Capitol with folks. I think it's easy on paper to say, some autism training and write it into a bill without maybe fully understanding the impact that it has on the department or the costs associated with that. And while additional training is great, and it's, we never stop learning, and I'm a proponent of additional training and keeping up with the latest research in all sorts of areas, I think there is a very real limit to the amount of training that we need that we can expect people to undergo, but the cost certainly is there as well. Not only in terms of the cost to have the training, but the cost of the personnel to go to the training and everything that comes with it. So that's a great point, and I think something that deserves attention and continued discussion as people come up with all sorts of ideas of additional training that people can go through, which is not all bad, but maybe not all necessary either. All right, well, thank you so much for coming. This has been a great discussion. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at the Capitol. From you is where I get all the best ideas. And I'm happy to continue to work for the needs of public safety in the district. Anything you need, let me know. Some of these other things, let's keep talking about it. As you know, and as Commissioner Brigham knows, and others up at the Capitol, if you're not being loud about something and advocating for it, it's not going to happen. So I am proud to be the loud voice there at the Capitol for public safety. Feel free to reach out anytime. Thanks you guys for coming.
Thank you.